Hey, how's it going everyone? I'm Keith from Heavy Mental Art. I made this Invader Zim artwork for an upcoming group art show called Saturday Morning Cartoons, based around your favorite cartoon growing up. There's about 30 other artists involved that have made artworks for some of their favorite cartoons. In this video I'll be going through the process, painting my artwork onto a wooden panel and getting it ready for the art show. Hope you enjoy. Here's the wooden panel that I'll be painting today. It's a good idea to give it a quick sand. I usually go over it with a rough sandpaper first, give it a wipe down, then go back over it with more of a finer sandpaper. Me personally, I prefer painting onto wooden panels compared to canvases. They are a lot more durable and they're more fun to paint on, and they also give you a much more smoother surface to paint on as well. Once the panel is sanded, I start laying down the first coat of the gesso or gesso. I've called it by both names before, but I'm pretty sure it's gesso. I usually lay down about 2 coats, and in between the coats, give it a quick sand of the rough and the finer sandpaper, and then give it another wipe down. So this gives it a nice tooth for the paint to stick on and adhere to. Now that the panel is primed to paint, I'm going to spray paint the background color on and try to get a nice gradient effect. The spray paint brand that I'm using is called Montana. I've used this spray paint a couple of times for murals and other art projects. I really like the colors that they come in, and they're really nice to spray with and paint. I'm still pretty new to spray painting and learning as I go, trying to learn different spray techniques. I really like how these colors go together. Doesn't look as good on camera, but looks more vibrant in real life. I try to get a nice gradient effect. Before I start drawing the artwork onto the panel and start painting, it's a good idea to tape up the sides of the panel. It helps keep the side panels clean, and so you don't get any paint on there that you don't want to. The wooden panel is pretty much ready to paint at this point. I'm going to start on the actual concept that I'll be painting onto the panel. Starting out in Photoshop, just working on a quick concept. The idea I had in mind was a more monstrous version of Invader Zim, but still keeping within that vibrant cartoony style as well. Invader Zim was one of my favorite cartoons growing up. Also shows like Ren and Stimpy, Cat Dog, Our Real Monsters, Courage the Cowardly Dog, among other shows. We definitely had some weird cartoons growing up in the 90s and early 2000s. I felt like they could get away with a lot more back then compared to now, so I blame those shows for why I'm so messed up now. Once I'm finished with the concept in Photoshop, I then bring that over into Procreate. I then start on the line work and color for the final artwork to be painted onto the panel. Shows like this definitely had a big impact on me growing up with my art style, drawing cartoon characters like this in the back of my school books, not doing my schoolwork. Here is the finished artwork I'll be painting onto the panel. I printed out my line work of the design in the size of the panel. I'll be using this white transfer paper to trace my design onto the panel. You just put down a sheet of transfer paper and then your design on top. Tape it all down into place so it doesn't move as you're drawing over it. it's a good idea to start tracing your design using a ballpoint pen so you can actually see where you've done and where you've missed, and make sure to use a bit of pressure when you're tracing it so it goes onto the panel properly. This was actually my first time using white transfer paper, and it didn't go down too clear, so I just went back over the design with a white pencil. Once the design is onto the panel, I like to give it a quick coat of matte medium, so this basically seals in the design so it doesn't get smudged or damaged, and gives it a more smoother surface to paint on. Finally, it's time to paint. The paints that I'm using for this artwork is called Perma Acrylic. It used to be called Perma Plastic, so it's a really good high quality water-based paint that I've used a lot for large scale murals and smaller artworks. It comes in a variety of vibrant colors and also fluoro colors that glow under UV lights. I've also mixed a lot of colors myself that I'm using in this artwork. The paints are Australian made, so I'm not sure if they're available to ship overseas. I'm sure they would be. The vibrancy of the paints can easily last 5 to 7 years. I've had murals that I've painted and they've still kept the vibrancy of the colors 3-4 years later, being out in the sun and the weather. But yeah, I really love this paint. It has a nice satin or eggshell sheen to the paint once it's dried. I'm sure there's other better paints out there, but I've used this a lot and I'm really happy with it. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check these paints out, along with the spray that I've used, or the varnishes and finishes that I've used, or any other things that I've used in this video in the description. You can probably see me using a hairdryer in the video, and that's a good way to quickly dry paint, so you can just get straight into painting and not having to wait for the paint to dry. I'm nowhere near the best painter, but I do enjoy painting. Before painting this artwork, it was a while since I've actually painted properly. I do a lot of digital art, but lately I've enjoyed getting back into doing more traditional stuff like ink illustrations and paintings. I feel like going back to traditional art sometimes can help develop your skills a bit more, and for me it helped me enjoy making art more because it forced me to slow down and concentrate on what I'm doing and being in the moment. Now that all the colors are down and the details, onto one of my favorite parts of making art is the line work. I find it really relaxing and enjoyable. Once the artwork is finished and fully dried, it's time to take off the tape from the sides. It's very satisfying. The next step is to get it varnished and ready to hang for the art show. I like using a satin varnish. It's a good middle between matte and gloss varnish. I find gloss to be too shiny, especially if you try and take photos and when it's hanging on the wall. I usually give it about 2 to 3, sometimes 4 layers of varnish. Make sure it's dried properly in between coats or you'll get like blotching. And once the varnish is actually down, do not go back over it until it's fully dry or you'll end up wrecking the varnish. Varnish also adds more vibrancy to the colors of the paints. It's a good idea to name and sign the artwork on the back. If you're making an artwork for an art exhibition or even as a commission, it's a good idea to make sure it's ready to hang on the wall, so it saves them time having to go through the trouble of doing it themselves. So if someone ends up buying it, they can just put it straight onto their wall or office or whatever. You can get these D-hook and wire sets on Amazon. I'll also leave a link in the description. You can get them for really cheap. I like to measure where I'll be putting the D-hooks with a ruler on both sides of the panel. Then get the D-hook screwed in first and then put the wire on in like a double thread. So now it's all ready for the art show. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope this video helped you in some ways for making art. I'm really happy with how this painting came out. Let me know in the comments your favorite cartoon growing up. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Let me know if you like these kind of videos where I go through from start to finish of creating an artwork. That's it for now. Keep on creating, and I'll see you in the next video.